Welcome to the Parallel World Library, where we explore strange and fascinating stories in other dimensions. Now, let's relax your body and take your mind to another world. Number 13, Mint Street by TunaV. Chapter 32, The Art of Demons 1.
Royal, noble, duke, luxurious, dignified, generous, golden coffin. Elegant, reserved, steady, wise, brilliant, calm. Cyan Win, coffin.
In the living room, Sylvan was sitting on a small sofa and reading the house's coffin list. These were the two most expensive coffins on the list, with accompanying photos priced at 2,250,000 Lu and 2,500,000 Lu, respectively. Perhaps the Cayenne Wind coffin was more expensive than the golden coffin because of the price of elegance. Uncle Mason had said before that reduced 5 times the book's list. Price is the cost price. But even so, 550,000 Lu and 500,000 Lu were still enormous figures. If Sylvan remembered correctly, 500,000 Lu was enough to buy a house with 3 bedrooms and a living room in a good location in the city. Oh my, in the world of the wealthy, a coffin really was a house.
Coffee.
Thank you, Aunt.
Aunt Winnie put the coffee on the tea table and sat on the opposite sofa.
Free these days?
Aunt Winnie asked.
Yes.
Sylvan nodded. Mina and the others all had to go to school, but he didn't. So these days, he was still in charge of cooking, refreshing the family's perception of gourmet food. The other day, he deliberately made buffalo chicken wings, and the family's tolerance for spicy food was actually quite good. Moreover, Uncle Mason ate with particular joy, which resulted in Uncle Mason walking with a limp the next day, his hemorrhoids flaring up again. He had nothing else to do besides cooking. Although Grandfather didn't help him restore his school records, he brought him a set of high school textbooks and study guides. Except for the history book that Sylvan occasionally flipped through, the rest of the books weren't of much value to him.
After a while, it should get busy. In the Crystal Flower nursing home, 2 more elderly people have become very weak. Also, several patients' conditions have become critical in the 2 hospitals cooperating with our family. At the church, there's also a believer lying at home on their deathbed. I'll introduce you to provide psychological counseling for their families.
Thank you, Aunt.
What's there to thank you for working for our own company? Drink your coffee. I've added sugar for you.
Yes.
Sylvan's left hand ached slightly when moved. Although the coffee was placed on the left side, he still leaned over to lift the cup and take a sip with his right hand. At this moment, the phone rang. Aunt Winnie stood up to answer the phone.
Hello. I understand.
Clunk. The sound of the phone hanging up was a bit heavy. Then came Aunt Winnie's call, more heavier.
Mason!
Uncle Mason, who had been drinking black tea and reading the financial newspaper upstairs, immediately left everything and put on his coat while quickly coming down the stairs. Aunt Winnie said,
The stage at Crown Dance Hall has collapsed. There are many casualties.
Ah, Crown Dance Hall.
Mason nodded immediately.
Where is Crown Dance Hall?
Aunt Mary's voice was at the top of the stairs. Mason immediately asked puzzledly,
Yes, where is Crown Dance Hall?
I know, Mr. Mason, it's on Hill Street, an old dance hall.
Ron answered. Earlier, he and Paul were sunbathing on deck chairs in the garden. Typically, when there was no work, they would rest all day. This profession was like that. Even if you knew there was no work, you still had to have staff on duty.
Oh, on Hill Street.
Uncle Mason turned his head, looking towards Aunt Mary standing at the upstairs door.
Darling, you prepare a bit too. I'll hurry to pick up customers if there are any.
All right, dear.
Aunt Mary nodded. Sitting on the sofa nearby, Sylvan watched this scene and couldn't help but find it funny. If one didn't know better, they might think our house was a 911 dispatch, needing to mobilize urgently. But this was a business network, not only having relationships with nursing homes and hospitals, but also in many other places. There were also informants who would notify us when encountering this kind of thing. Business was done like this. You had to be proactive.
Many casualties, right?
Mason looked towards Sylvan.
Sylvan, you come along too. Extra help might be needed.
Yes.
Uncle Mason sat in the driver's seat. Sylvan, along with Paul and Ron, folded up the stretcher and placed it in the car. They then brought body bags and sat in the car together. Before the hearse started, Aunt Winnie threw a stack of flyers advertising the Inmare's family funeral service into the car window.
Let's go.
Mason resolutely looked at his sister and wife once, like a general setting out to battle. Aunt Winnie and Aunt Mary also had serious expressions, waiting for the general to return victorious. The car drove very fast. Sylvan saw Uncle Mason continuously run 2 red lights. Fortunately, in this era, there were no CCTV cameras to monitor and capture. As long as they weren't unlucky enough to encounter patrolling police, there wouldn't be any problems. Of course, car accidents were different.
Can a dance hall collapse be that serious?
Sylvan asked curiously. Ron was about to answer when Uncle Mason, who was driving, said,
Crown Dance Hall has its special stage. A tempered glass stage suspended nearly 5 meters high. Dancers wearing super short skirts would stand and dance on that glass, and audiences standing below could look up and admire to their heart's content. Of course, many guests would pay extra to experience the excitement of dancing on high. So, if the stage there collapses, people dancing above and below would easily suffer terrible consequences.
Ron chimed in,
That's right. Invited dancer for one dance costs 5 lu, while the price for dancing on the glass is 50 lu, so it's too expensive.
Uncle Mason said,
Money is secondary, mainly because I'm afraid the Crown Dance Hall rarely renovates. I don't dare to go up in case one day something unexpected happens, and I'm unlucky enough to be there. How tragic the accidental deaths in the family ultimately are, I've witnessed quite a few.
Does Uncle go there often?
Sylvan asked.
When I was young, I liked to go. After marrying your aunt, I didn't go much. A few years ago, when I returned to Luogia City to visit family, I went with some old friends 2 or 3 times like that. After really moving back here, I haven't been there again. And I don't keep in touch with those old friends anymore.
It wasn't about friends avoiding the poor and loving the rich or anything, purely because Uncle Mason used to be considered a financial figure with some achievements. Now, he was the manager of the family funeral company, completely 2 different circles. It's not like you could say, "Hey buddy, I know you're heartbroken that your relative passed away. Why don't we go dancing?" Soon they arrived at Hill Street. Uncle Mason continued to step on the gas, then turned into a road only wide enough for 1 car to pass. Going a bit further, they quickly went from the small street to the main street. After coming out of the alley, they turned right and stopped. Clearly, Uncle Mason was very familiar with this place. The building in front hung signs for a cinema, gym, and other brands, but the largest among them, glittering and attracting people's eyes, was the Crown Dance Hall. They had arrived. Chapter 33, The Art of Demons, 2. At this moment, a large crowd had gathered at the entrance by the road. Many people were covered in blood, with bleeding heads, and some were scared to the point of crying and screaming. In short, it was very noisy. As Sylvan's group exited the car, a police car suddenly stopped beside them. In the passenger seat was a police chief wearing a blue windbreaker and smoking a pipe. He looked at the Inmare's family hearse in front of him with great surprise and shouted,
"Damn it, Mason, how did you guys get here even faster than the police and ambulance?"
Clearly, the police chief and Uncle Mason knew each other. It wasn't surprising. Some stable customer sources from society, besides nursing homes, hospitals, and churches, came next, the police station. Going to the police station's morgue to pull bodies was a normal thing. Uncle Mason explained,
Chief Duke, what a coincidence. We just happened to be on the street ahead.
Oh.
Police Chief Duke clearly didn't believe that. However, due to traffic congestion and because Luogia City Stadium was hosting a national football match today, many police officers were deployed for security. The police force was currently understaffed.
You come with me. Help me maintain some order.
Yes.
Uncle Mason immediately stood at attention, and Ron and Paul beside him also stood at attention. Sylvan was half a beat slower, but also puffed out his chest to follow suit. This scene was a bit funny. Police Chief Duke couldn't help but smile, but immediately realized this situation wasn't appropriate, quickly put on a serious face, and turned to instruct the police driver.
Mick, turn on the siren and clear the way for the ambulance to come in.
Yes, Chief.
Ron and Paul pushed the crowd away at the front. Police Chief Duke first glanced at the injured people along the road, presumably those who had run out of the dance hall after the stage collapsed. Although quite a few people were injured, they could run out by themselves, so their problems shouldn't be too serious. They were also doing simple bandaging and stopping each other's bleeding.
Are there still people inside?
Police Chief Duke asked.
Are there still people inside?
Uncle Mason pulled a man wearing a dance hall staff uniform.
Yes, there are still people.
Let's go. We're going in.
Police Chief Duke went in first. When going up the stairs, he saw several seriously injured people being carried out, with people who had glass shards in their thighs or stomachs lying or sitting on the floor waiting for rescue. Uncle Mason gave up on the man with glasses in his thigh and ran to a young man in fashionable clothes, holding tightly to his stomach where a glass shard had pierced.
Are you all right? Can you hang on?
The young man thought it was a doctor arriving, immediately nodded and said,
I feel it's not a big problem. I can still endure it.
Uncle Mason's enthusiasm instantly disappeared and he also let go.
Doctor?
The young man still called out to Uncle Mason.
Sorry, I want to go inside to find more seriously injured people. They need me more right now.
The young man nodded and said,
I understand.
Police Chief Duke led the Inmare's household members to continue going inside. On the way, Police Chief Duke sarcastically remarked to Mason,
So eager and impatient, hoping for dead people to appear.
Uncle Mason replied,
It's the off-season these days.
Ah, the off-season.
During your off-season, you can still go arrest cannabis dealers or illegal brothels. During our off-season, we can't exactly go kill people.
I can warn you, if seriously injured people are found inside later, they must first be taken to the hospital. If the ambulance hasn't arrived yet, use your car to take them. Don't directly pull people who aren't dead yet to your home.
How could that be possible?
While talking, everyone finally entered the dance hall. At this time, there weren't many people left. Most had already gone outside, but there were still more than a dozen people inside. The ground was littered with large and small glass shards. They saw a person leaning against a long chair just a few steps in. Getting closer, they discovered half of the head had been sheared off. Behind the seat was a large piece of glass about 3 square meters. Such a large piece of glass falling had sheared off half of the person's head like a watermelon being cut open. The scene behind the seat was even more unbearable. It was full of colors, as if a sauce shop had opened. Uncle Mason hurriedly went forward, then turned his head to look at Police Chief Duke, anxiously asking,
Chief, come quick and see. Is this one completely dead yet?
Police Chief Duke went up intending to kick Mason, but noticing the broken glass all around him on the ground, he held back midway and didn't actually kick. From this, it could be seen that the relationship between Uncle Mason and Police Chief Duke was really not bad. 3 years ago, Police Chief Duke's mother had passed away, and the funeral was held at the Inmare's home, with the company only charging 1 lu for the burial fee. Chapter 34, The Art of Demons 3.
Ron, bag the body,
Uncle Mason ordered.
Yes, sir.
Ron took out a body bag and started wrapping up this unfortunate gentleman, muttering as he worked.
The fee for this front row seat isn't cheap. You really were unlucky, sir.
This area in front was right beneath the glass stage. Sitting here and looking up would give the best view. Ron worked quickly, not frightened by the gruesome death scene or anything else. This was professionalism, and it was the reason Ron and Paul could rest all day while still earning much higher wages than ordinary workers. Up ahead, someone was surrounded by several people. There were several glass shards stuck in his body, blood constantly flowing from his mouth. His words no longer clear, only his eyes blinking. Because the wound was truly too severe, those surrounding him didn't dare move him carelessly, afraid they might accidentally kill him. Uncle Mason immediately went forward, grabbed his hand and said,
Hang on! Hang on! You must hang on!
After saying this, he immediately called to Paul behind him.
Stretcher! Bring the stretcher! Quick!
Paul, who was carrying a stretcher, immediately set it down but didn't unfold the 4 wheels. Uncle Mason instructed those around.
Careful, everyone. Help lift a bit, mind your stability, and first carry the stretcher outside. The ambulance will arrive very soon. He still has hope.
Everyone immediately followed Mason's instructions and started exerting effort to help. Sylvan knew Uncle Mason was so enthusiastic because this person, barring a miracle, probably couldn't be saved. However, Mason's choice was indeed correct. Doing this was truly the best for the injured person, as it could help them get doctor's treatment faster. After the injured person was taken to the hospital and unfortunately didn't make it, Uncle Mason had already become familiar with and could very naturally stand before a group of grateful family members, securing this funeral order. Police Chief Duke watched from the side, not disturbing Mason. He clearly understood that although Mason wanted to get orders, he wasn't someone who would cause chaos. Sylvan had wanted to go up to help, but with so many people, he had no place to lend a hand. Just then, Sylvan heard Police Chief Duke say,
Ah.
Looking towards the sound, he discovered that Police Chief Duke had gone to the middle of the stage. Regarding the layout of the Crown Dance Hall, in the center was a very large wooden stage with 3 high steps, and the glass stage was right above this wooden stage. After the glass stage crashed, several holes were also created in the middle of the stage below. At this moment, Police Chief Duke was squatting beside a hole, reaching out to pull away several broken wooden planks nearby. Sylvan went over and was immediately stunned. Inside this hole, there was clearly the corpse of a man lying there. This male corpse was completely naked, both arms spread out symmetrically on either side at 45-degree angles, palms facing upwards, and the middle fingers were pinned upright with 2 iron nails. On the corpse's abdomen, right at the navel, was a white flower, presumably made of plastic. Above and below the navel, there were traces of stitching. Very likely, this wasn't just a flower, but a flower pot. A flower pot inside the abdomen of the male corpse. Moreover, the face of the male corpse was heavily made up. Lipstick traces extended from both corners of the mouth, creating the feeling that this person was smiling. On the chest of the male corpse was placed a book, and on the cover was written Soul Song, the Bible of the Berry Church. Remember before, Aunt Mary had once cursed Mr. Moson's children for trying to save money by deliberately saying Mr. Moson was a follower of the Berry Church. And in Berry's teachings, it was required that after death, the body must be cremated, returning once again to nature. Performing makeup on the remains or organizing grand funerals was even more blasphemous to nature and was precisely contrary to the teachings. But this male corpse on the stage before their eyes, his remains had been made up and arranged with far too much. On the other hand, judging from the greenish-black state of the corpse's skin, he must have been dead for a very long time. It couldn't be possible that the falling glass stage killed him, and then someone nearby stripped him and arranged him like this. Could it? Police Chief Duke's gaze was heavy. The earlier dance hall incident was an accident, and since it was an accident, for police like him, it actually didn't have much to do with them. Maintaining good order for rescue was enough. But this corpse before their eyes was different. Police Chief Duke, with a cigarette in his mouth, muttered,
If it weren't for this accident, we really wouldn't have discovered this murder case.
I feel it's not like that.
Huh?
Police Chief Duke turned his head to look at the handsome young man standing beside him.
Then what do you think?
Sylvan pointed at the male corpse in the hole and said,
The killer, in order to display his artwork, deliberately created this accident.
This is the end of today's story. Please like and subscribe to support the channel and follow the next developments. Thank you.